Folks, you missed him during the NFC preview show, excuse me, but he's here now. Jared Silberkleid and I here to take you through the entire week slate of the NFL season. But before we start, I know you're a Giants fan, but the big news that's hit the NFL this week is that the Jets decided to fire Robert Salah after a 2-3 start. You live closer to the situation than me. I've gotten a bit of a grasp on it, but how have you viewed it from a Giants perspective? But then also, too, how has the Jets fans, taken it, excluding Danny for obvious reasons?
Well, I gotta say, as a Giants fan, it's kind of like a little bit of sweet vindication because you've been just the fact that going into the season it was all like, oh, we're the Jets. Look, we have Aaron Rodgers, Super Bowl contenders. Like, oh, look at these lowly Giants. They're clearly the worst team in the league. And I think that right now, like, not to say that we're doing great at 2-3 or anything, but I think that I think we look like a little bit less of a dumpster fire than the Jets do in terms of there's clearly a lot of, internal chaos going on right now in this organization to where Rodgers is there and it seems more like Rodgers has sunk to the Jets level, not the other way around. It really is just the same old team. It's just with a more recognizable face behind center. And, you could obviously see the last few games with the Jets offense not performing at the level it was expected to this year, that there was clearly a lot of aggressive disagreement going on.
They've had one game they looked good, and it was against the Patriots.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
It's like the big nail in the coffin where I'm like, oh my God. But the big thing with the Jets is just I've done some digging on this, and I found out through everything else. I don't know how often we credit or discredit just Woody Johnson's ability as an owner, because I know they're on a lengthy playoff drought right now. But do you know how many years out of the 25 years that he's been the owner, they've missed the playoffs?
Out of the 25 years he's been the owner, they missed the playoffs. Okay, so the years that they made the playoffs would be like maybe 3.
19 of 25 they have missed.
Okay, all right. It's not as bad as I thought it was. Yeah, because I was thinking about I can't recall playoff berths outside of those AFC Championship games.
I think they had some like through the early 2000s. I could be wrong, but
yeah, there was the year that you had the three-way tie, right? The three-way tie after the first Patriots Super Bowl. Didn't the Jets actually end up in at like 9-7 or something?
They did, because the Patriots missed the playoffs in 2002.
Yeah, that was the other one that I recalled. And then nothing else comes to mind. I'm definitely missing some years, but I think that they choked it away with Ryan Fitzpatrick, right? The Fitzmagic year, they didn't get in.
There was that one weird year where they were like 10-6 with Todd Bowles and they just missed out.
Yeah.
There were some other years too where they like peed down their leg throughout the season. But it's the last real 7 years or so where it's just been trying to find something. I feel like they're that team where it's like, hey, we want to win now. We want to give our fans a product to cheer for. But then they haven't really done anything. Not that they haven't done anything about it. It's just they've overthunk it too much to where, look, this is a team that won 7-10 last year with really bad quarterback play. 2-3 is unacceptable, but at the same time, too, I don't know if firing Salah is the right call now. I would have understood it more if it was in January. Also, too, Johnsons don't do this. I've learned this is the first time they fired a coach in-house. But like in season. The first in-house in firing in season. It's a lot of ins. But I do think he's going to land on his feet. As a head coach, I don't know, but he'll definitely be a defensive coordinator, I think, next year or the year after, because head coaching hires always, I know everyone's trying to find that bright offensive mind right now, but it's kind of funny, too, if you think about Aaron Rodgers, how he's potentially poisoned 2 franchises and getting Nathaniel Hackett 2 jobs, even though he didn't go to one team with the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, it definitely could be. The play calling definitely is uninspired, but overall, this team is just it's mainly being sunk by poor offensive line play, because coming into this season, not only was there a lot of hype for Aaron Rodgers, but also Breece Hall was going in the first round of a lot of fantasy drafts. A lot of people were looking at that guy like he was going to really be the engine to make this offense go. And he's practically—
I put him first overall.
Yeah, exactly. He's been like a non-factor, for the most part this season, just because when you have this terrible offensive line, you can't get anything going. I've been barking about this as a Giants fan forever, but it really just goes to show, people like to, it's not the sexy talking point to talk about blocking, because those aren't the positions that get the stats, get the Sports Center highlights. Never been that way. But at the end of the day, if you don't have your offensive line functioning at a high level, your offense cannot function. It is literally to be a stampede every time the ball is snapped. And that's what the Jets are dealing with this year. So I think that, like, yes, it could, Robert Salah, is this impressive what we're seeing, from this guy in terms of play calling? But I think that, like, no, but there are bigger issues going on here. And I don't think that firing this guy is really going to solve the personnel issues, or the fact that, okay, so you watch Jets games, like the Vikings game is actually a great example of this. I was watching with Danny, right? We're doing like basically texting live commentary. And you can tell Rodgers and Garrett Wilson have absolutely no chemistry together whatsoever. The only now, and maybe that game people might think is a bad example that he had all these catches and totaled up 100 yards, but he got 100 yards on 13 catches, which means that every single one of those passes were just dink and dunk. Whenever he tried hitting that guy more than 10 yards downfield, they weren't on the same page whatsoever. But yet, when he goes to throw to Alan Lazard, did they connect all the time? No, because Lazard has stone hands. But the throws were on target. The timing was definitely there. It's a lack of execution on Lazard's side, but just goes to show you got like this number one elite receiver that, again, people are thinking like, oh yeah, that'd be a big step forward for them. So between Wilson, between Breece Hall, you've got two elite skill position players that you're not able to utilize because the quarterback and the receiver aren't on the same page, and your offensive line absolutely sucks.
So here's my $1 million question with the Jets. I feel like Danny's probably going to DM me after this and telling me this. But here's my whole thing now. They want to go and get Davante Adams, but what is that going to do to your team? Because here's the thing with them right now trying to do this. You're looking at short-term success, but you're potentially looking at long-term failure because they have a lot of guys next year. They have Sauce Gardner, who I know Danny's unhappy with. They have Breece Hall. They have Jermaine Johnson, who tore his Achilles week 2. And they have Garrett Wilson from that 22 draft class, who, guess what? They all are going to want money next offseason. They're all going to, like, Sauce, look, I don't know if he deserves big money. He definitely doesn't deserve a Pat Surtain guy. I still think Pat Surtain's CB1 in the NFL right now. But Garrett Wilson can not potentially command top wide receiver dollar, but he can definitely get, I think, $20 million or something like that. But then you can't let what Aaron Rodgers has done dictate that. So now if you bring in Davante Adams, what do you do with him? You just basically lower him on the depth chart, or you trade him back to Vegas. But then guess what? Vegas now has a wide receiver one that they can build around for years to come. And with the Raiders or the Jets, I look at this as, okay, where do you go 25, 26, 27? Like, because this team in the league, we're going to get into this, but there's not a team that inspires me right now to be hoisting the Lombardi in New Orleans come February. I almost said November. I don't know why. That's because my mind's with Canadian football. But, it's just one of those like weird, okay, who's going to step up and do it? We'll find out Monday night with the Jets, but it's a really interesting time for them, just how everything's evolved.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that the Davante Adams speculation had started in the offseason, in the preseason, because people kind of knew that was going to turn into an ugly situation over in
Especially
Vegas.
After the Netflix show.
Right? Yeah. So I think that it would make sense to go get Davante Adams if this was a team that was looking good and you're looking to add the exclamation mark to really put you over the top and get you to the Super Bowl. If it was like the Jets were right there, the Jets were rocking and rolling, and they really just needed that one thing to get them over the hump, to put them ahead of the Chiefs, then you start making a play for a guy like Adams. Screw the future. You're going all in this year. You got a real chance to win the Super Bowl. No one would question it. But it looks like now that's like a desperate move to try to edge this team into contention, right? And it's like, okay, let's just say Davante Adams, improves this offense in some regard, and he's good for maybe another couple of wins, and it's good for the Jets to sneak their way into a wild card spot and probably lose their first playoff game. And like you pointed out, you're destroying the future just to maybe salvage one playoff appearance. And with Rodgers, he's going to be gone, after this year or next year? How much longer is this guy really going to stick around at this point? Especially with him getting battered. Why would Aaron Rodgers want to stick around getting battered and abused because of this crappy offensive line? Why would he tolerate that at his age? The only reason is if there's a chance to win a Super Bowl. But if the Jets are clearly not at that level, there's no way the Jets are going to find themselves in the AFC Championship game this year, or even the divisional round, most likely. I mean, look at the rest of the AFC. You've got the Texans, which have a ton of offensive firepower. You got the Ravens, who look awesome with their running game. You got the Chiefs, who are undefeated right now. I mean, where is the path? There is none. The best case scenario for this team is that they claw their way just above 500 and sneak into the playoffs. And just like you mentioned, they're going to wind up owing all these guys big money in free agency. Getting Devontae Adams just compounds the issues even more so. And yeah, to top it all off, it's like I would not worry about adding another big ticket guy. I would look at your foundational weaknesses and get to work on rebuilding this offensive line.
So here's my $1 million thing with them as well. If they also don't, because we all know Jeff Ulbricht's probably not going to be the full-time coach unless, and I hate all the riders. Oh, this caught me off guard. No, Aaron probably, I don't know if he had a say, but he definitely knew it was coming before the rest of the team and organization besides the executive brass.
I don't think they make this move this early in the season if it's not a Rodgers move, because this is a decision to placate. Like they must think that, oh, we have to do something drastic to save this thing. And I feel like if Rodgers isn't the quarterback here, that move doesn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. And then my other big question with it too is if they go and hire a new head coach next year, if Aaron's not on board with it, he's probably going to go because his contract, like he did sign the contract they gave him the money, but they basically, last season they gave him the money this offseason where it's like, hey, we're doing this just to lock you in for here. So next year's not guaranteed. Same thing with Devontae Adams. I know he's got 2 more years on his contract, but that's probably going to get ripped up after next offseason because he's going to want to get a big payday. He's going to want to go to a team where he can be the guy, he can win, because Vegas ruined that for him when he was supposed to go there. Remember 2 years ago,
to play with his buddy.
But it was 4 teams from that division were going to make the playoffs. Oh, why can't every AFC West team be there? The Chargers ended up being bad. The Raiders were terrible, and the Broncos were god-awful. So, and here's the other thing, too, with everything with the Jets as well. I know, look, out of all the games they've had, the Titans game and the Patriots game, they looked good. But when you're playing bottom-tier teams in the NFL and you're looking good, that doesn't inspire confidence in the rest of the NFL world to say, hey, you're going to play successful football come January and February. Losing to the Broncos the way you did was inexcusable. I'm sorry. I know I had them on minus 7.5, but still. And then also the fact you got your doors beaten off of you week 1 in San Francisco on Monday Night Football. What's that say to the rest of the world? As we step in now, because tonight, so folks, by the time this comes out, this game's already probably going to be kicked off while you're listening to it, or you can listen to us during the game. But San Francisco versus Seattle, which I think I got that wrong because I'm pretty sure they're going to the Pacific Northwest. This game I don't think is at Levi's. So if the ticker says that wrong, I do apologize.
It's in Seattle. Yep.
It's in Seattle. I have the ticker saying FS versus C. That's on me. But anyway, I'm going to keep this short and sweet because I placed a little same gamer on FanDuel before this.
Do tell.
So I put in for George Kittle, who, by the way, I have in fantasy against you this week, to get a touchdown. George Kittle, 40-plus yards. But I also took them at minus 3.5. I'm going to go on a bit of a thing here. The last few games, look, for San Francisco, it's like, hey, you beat the Giants, you beat the Giants, the Jets, the Patriots. But then losing to Minnesota was one thing. Okay, it was the loss to Arizona for me and the loss to the Rams, where if they lose this game, they fall to 0-3 in the division. You're not going to win the division going 3-3. If you go 4-2, you can win the division still. But the fact that the Arizona Cardinals I know the Cardinals only have 2 wins on the year. They're 2-0 in division play. The Rams have 1 win. They're 1-1 in division play. You're 0-2 in division play. And also, here's the other thing, too, I've discovered. Geno Smith, not a big guy in primetime. Not the biggest primetime guy in the world. Also, side note, I know it says minus 4. I got the spread at minus 3.5 tonight for the 49ers. So I think this is the perfect get-right game for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next week against Kansas City, by the way.
Yeah, the Seahawks are looking ugly heading into this game. And I would say that they're a little fraudulent at 3-2. And the Niners, to me, this is like a Ravens 0-2 situation where, they've lost some tough games. I mean, all 3 of their losses were 1 possession. In the case of the Rams in Arizona, it's like, yeah, those are 2 tough divisional losses, but by 3 points versus the Rams, and then the Cardinals kind of pulled one out at the last second. Now, granted, everyone kind of looked at the Niners like they should be the runaway top seed in the NFC. They should be winning these games. But I don't think that this is like an indictment saying like they're like this bad team. I think that they've just, lost a couple close ones and cream rises. And I don't think that they're going to blow their 3rd straight divisional game to open the year. Not to mention Seattle's coming into this game with so many injuries on defense. I feel like Jordan Mason's going to have an absolute field day. I look for the Niners to win by double digits. That's my prediction.
I think 1 of 2 things happens in this game. I think one, Seattle keeps it close and they pull off the upset, or San Francisco blows the doors off of them and wins by at least 10 points. That's the thing too, because if this gets to be like a 4 to 7 point game, that's where I think panic can set in for the 49ers. That's where I think, it could fall off for them. It could go wrong. But at the end of the day, I'm going to trust San Francisco to bounce back, especially considering too, here's the thing. They play this game. They have Kansas City and Dallas coming next. And I know Dallas has looked a little iffy this year, and I know you hate Dallas. And I know Kansas City's been uninspiring, and Patrick Mahomes' numbers, especially with EPA per play, shout out Big Rat and Randy. His numbers are down, but they're 5-0, so no one cares that he's playing bad. That's a defensive football team who's beaten you, who's had your number ever since Kyle Shanahan's gotten there, including 2 Super Bowls. And then Dallas, same thing. That game, here's the other thing too, San Francisco. This is ever since their struggles, this is their first exposure to primetime. You're not buried in the 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock window anymore where you can just be ignored. You lose a game like this, everyone's going to be talking, what's going on with the Niners, which I did fix the ticker, by the way, folks. So not Seattle versus San Fran, Seattle +4. So that's where my thinking for this game comes in. What do you do if you lose this game? And tomorrow you have Stephen A. Smith barking at you. You have Greenberg, you have Florio, you have all these morning pundits saying, what's wrong with the 49ers?
Yeah, I just think that they're going to come into this game angry for those reasons. They know they have these big games coming up. The schedule makers were not kind to this team, but they should be able to handle it. And I think that they could start a run here. I think that they actually have a really good chance to be Kansas City's first loss. I just feel like, again, too much talent in this team. Even without Christian McCaffrey, that receiving core is still loaded. They're still physical on defense and everything like that. This team went to the Super Bowl last year for a reason. And I think that, and obviously with Jordan Mason's rushing stats, you can see that they're not missing a beat in terms of production in the running game. Obviously, you want to have CMC back, but it's not like they're hurting as far as moving the ball on the ground. So I think this could actually be the start of a little run for San Fran. I wouldn't be surprised if they take all 3 of those games. I hope I didn't curse them, but they're not my team, so I don't really care.
But here's the other thing with them too, though. Their schedule for the rest of the year, I just wanted to look it up. There's no game where I look at where I'm like, that's a cupcake. Like, they play tonight at Seattle in a couple hours, then they play Kansas City, then they play the Cowboys. But here's the thing. The Kansas City game, that's a 4:25 spot, so it's going to get national eyes. I'm pretty sure it's on Fox with Tom Brady calling it. Then you have the Cowboys.
How is that not the prime? What is the primetime game that week? If that's not a primetime, I don't know what is.
The following week, the primetime game, get ready for this. It's the Steelers and the Jets. So
yeah. No, seriously, what's the primetime game?
Pittsburgh and New York.
The Thursday game, right?
No, the Thursday game is the Broncos next week. Basically, networks bid for certain games. That's why, like, for example, Chiefs, like, there's certain games the networks will say, hey, we're going to pay you X amount of dollars so we can make sure it's on CBS, it's on Fox. And then they just say, NBC, do whatever you want. But the fact their next 2 games are primetime. But then here's the thing. You have at the Buccaneers, which, look, Tampa's looked good this year. I know they've had some games where they look kind of iffy, like losing to Denver. But then they beat the brakes off of Philly not even 2 weeks ago. Versus Seattle, at Green Bay, which that Green Bay game, that's going to be in the elements. And Green Bay almost beat them in the playoffs last year. At the Bills, Sunday Night Football. Versus the Bears. Versus the Rams, which is another Thursday night game. At the Dolphins. Versus the Lions. And at the Cardinals.
Yeah, none of those teams are terrible, that's for sure. But again, if the Niners are supposed to be like one of those teams, the narrative should be that all these teams have to play them, not the other way around necessarily. So, I mean, good teams beat other good teams. So this is not an easy schedule the rest of the way, but they're supposed to be one of the best teams. So the expectation is that they're going to win most of these games. So we'll see if they're able to get right. I mean, they haven't gotten clowned yet this year. They've just, it's a less than stellar start.
Yeah, and that's almost as when you're a team with Super Bowl aspirations, having less than having that instead of getting clowned, you're losing the teams you should beat. It's a bit of a red flag.
Yeah.
But we have Sunday morning football again. We have the Bears and the Jags going to London. Jacksonville hosting they're not hosting. They have their first of 2 games in London because they do that because the Cons.
They are the NFL's London's favorite NFL team. Yep.
Which I'm going to say this. I don't think a team. I know they always talk about it. Oh, a team in the London. I don't think it ever happens. It's just there's too much logistical. There's too much other stuff behind it, like waiver wires, free agency trades. It's not logistically possible. The other thing too, I've heard Super Bowl to London. I think it's the same thing. WrestleMania to London though, because we're wrestling. I think that's more realistic than people like to believe.
Yes.
But this game right here, Jacksonville got their win last week, but I'm going Chicago here. I think because here's the thing with Chicago too. Chicago's in a spot right now where they have to win certain games because basically for Chicago and we'll talk about Pittsburgh later, but for Chicago and Pittsburgh, they kind of have the easy part now because with Chicago, as I pull it up, they have the bye next week, but then they have at the Commanders, which that's no longer a slouch. At the Cardinals, you don't know what you're going to get. Patriots is probably a win for them. But then after that, for them, it's Packers, Vikings, Lions, 49ers, Vikings, Lions, Seahawks, Packers.
Yeah.
These are the games that you have to. These are the games this is a game you have to win if you're the Chicago Bears. You don't win this game, that is when playoff, later on in the year when we get to the Steve Kornacki time of year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, hey, you have to win this game. You have to go play in Lambeau Field week 18. You have to go in there and win now because you lost to the Jags in London. Meanwhile, that game might be this game could really be the difference between them missing and making the playoffs. And this game could get people fired later on.
Yeah, no, it definitely could. I mean, I think that this division overall is just super competitive, the NFC North. I don't know, despite the Bears 3-2 start, I don't buy this team as a legitimate playoff contender just yet. I just feel like we've seen a little bit too many red flags from Caleb Williams so far. Like, it's his rookie year and he's going to have growing pains. You're really not seeing a lot in the passing game from anybody besides DJ Moore. I mean, outside of that one good game that Roma Dunze had against the Colts, which I'll let you know a secret, everybody lights up the Colts secondary, not special. Same thing with the Panthers. You beat up the worst team in the league, and granted, I'm saying this as they go in at 3-2 versus.
That's the thing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And they still lost that game. So now you're going against the Jaguars. And again, I mean, it sounds weird dogging a team, that's like, in London against the Jags that are 1-4, and they've had a putrid looking offense as well. But I don't view Chicago as this team that's going to be able to string together all these wins this year. I just feel like you're going to see spurts, and I think that this game is going to kind of go in the direction of being a little bit of a shootout. And I just trust Trevor Lawrence a little bit more than I do Caleb Williams at this stage. Not to mention, Brian Thomas Jr. has looked absolutely incredible for the Jaguars so far this year. He's been a tremendous rookie wide receiver. Him and Malik Neighbors have been the superstars this year, outshining Marvin Harrison Jr. Who would have thought? Not to mention, looks like the chemistry between Lawrence and Christian Kirk is coming back too. Not both teams have kind of struggled to run the ball effectively, so I think it's going to be a little bit of an air show. I just feel like Jacksonville. I just feel like Lawrence has the potential to outduel Caleb and get them their second win. I mean, the Jaguars really rough start. Looks like it's probably gonna be a long shot for them to make the playoffs at this point. But I just feel like Chicago, you're gonna see them kind of tail off in the second half of this season. I feel like they're gonna get their wins, a handful of wins, but I feel like they're gonna probably wind up last place in the NFC North by the time this season's over. That's my prediction.
So I've always been the same with Chicago. I think they're like an 8-9, 9-8 team. They're sitting at 3-2 right now, but I can see a world where they're gonna win the games they're supposed to, like how they beat the Titans. They hung it tough with the Texans, which we'll get into the Texans when we have a lot of Patriot talk to get to. But then they beat the Rams. They beat the Panthers last week, but then they lose a weird game like they did to the Colts. This is the kind of game that they win. I know I was saying everything earlier about this is a game you have to win if you want to make the playoffs. But here's the thing, though. You win a game like this, but then like we were saying, you have the Commanders and the Cardinals coming up next, which then 4-2 could be 4-4 going into that Patriot game in November. So that's where I was getting at with it, because especially when you have that tough stretch of NFC North in November, in December, they also have the Thanksgiving game this year against Detroit. And I know Detroit at home on Thanksgiving hasn't been the most idle, but basically you have to know now, like if you could pick up a win here, where the point I was trying to make was you pick up a win here, you don't have to worry about making it up later. So now that tough divisional game is must win. So now if you lose it, it's not as devastating. But it's also the fact too, look, you're going to go into San Francisco in December when they're probably a full firing machine with Christian McCaffrey.
You want to talk about where the death sentence comes in for this team, in my opinion? You got 5 out of 6 divisional games, and the one that breaks it up is the Niners in Levi's. See that's the stretch where I can see them. I can see them losing like 4 or 5 out of 6 there, easy.
That's where I could see them. Like, you know what? Hey, they're 5-4. After that Patriot game, they're sitting at 5-4, but 5-4 quickly becomes 5-8. That's where I can see it. Though, that's why I'm going to stick with the Bears winning this game. I also like the Bears, just the money line outright for this game. I think that's what could be my first leg of my parlay that I haven't freaking won all year, but it is what it is.
All right.
But we have another divisional game. We talked about one already. We have another one Sunday, New Orleans and Tampa, where first of all, I just want to send my best out to the people in Tampa, obviously in all the Florida area, going through a lot. Tropicana, they got their roof completely ripped off today. So we hope that if you are listening to this in Florida, hopefully we could be a bit of escape from you. But the Buccaneers got out of Dodge on Monday. Them and their families, they've been in New Orleans all weekend and ready.
Yep.
Regardless of the hurricane and all that other stuff, I think this is I don't want to say get right game, but this is a game where I think where the Buccaneers show they're the better team. No disrespect to the Saints, but I just think, look, no Derek Carr, unless Spencer Rattler comes in and lights it up, because, look, we have more than one rookie quarterback making his debut this week. I just think that this is the kind of game. And also, the Buccaneers left last week with a bad taste in their mouth the way they lost to Atlanta, excuse me. The way that Tampa lost to Atlanta, there was just that bad taste in their mouth. Bastards could cover the points. But it's neither here nor there. So I think this is a proper get-right. Not even a get-right game for the Bucs. This is we're showing the NFL world we are them. We are the team. Even though we lost to Atlanta, we're still a good team.
I would agree with that. I mean, I think that, Todd Bowles' defense for a rookie quarterback making his first ever start, especially for, a Buccaneers team that's going to have a week and a half to prepare for this game. I think that they're going to come out. I think they're the most polished of the NFC South teams. I know that the Falcons kind of came into this year with, and I agree. I think that they're going to probably come out winning this division when it's all said and done. And I don't think that they're going to drop back-to-back divisional games after that. Tough loss to Atlanta. I think that this is a game where they can really shut down the Saints offense. And, they should be able to win pretty handily. I'd say a 2-possession game. This feels like a 20-10 type.
Yeah, exactly. It's a low-scoring game, but it's like a 20-10, 24. I'll put 24-10 on this, where it's like,
right.
Hey, they're doing their thing just to kind of get it through. But like I said, more or less for Tampa, it's just, I love the fact that Baker Mayfield showed that he's carved out a starting role for himself. I love the fact too, they're a really gritty team. They're just like a no nonsense, like, hey, we're going to continue to play great football, and they're going to do it at a game like this. Look, they lost bad last week. They're going to rebound. They're going to win this week. And that's the matter of that. Green Bay versus Arizona. I'm going to keep this one very short and sweet. For as good as Arizona looked last week being the Niners, I think this is another case of just, look, Green Bay is going to be the better team.
Yeah, I mean, there should be a lot of points here. I think this is going to be a fun game between two offenses that have been able to, move the ball pretty effectively, particularly through the air. Got to give a lot of credit to Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed coming into this year, I think that people looked at the Packers receivers collectively as taking a step forward with Jordan Love last year. And I think that there was the narrative for a while that Christian Watson was going to be the next guy in this offense. And then for a little bit, people thought it was Romeo Doubs. But Jaden Reed, man, I mean, he's just been so freaking explosive for these guys. He's basically been the Packers version of Deebo Samuel, where you can just kind of plug this guy all over the field and he can just put up numbers in bunches. And yeah, I would look for him to have another really big game today. And the Cardinals, you got to take some shots with Marvin Harrison, man. I mean, we saw that one amazing quarter against the Rams, and not a lot since. We haven't seen, Kyler Murray really stretching the field with him. So I feel like if the Cardinals are going to have a chance in this game, then you gotta show that you can go kind of blow for blow with Jordan Love here. I do expect this game to hit the over, and I lean Green Bay being the better team, but I think that this can be competitive.
So Arizona, basically in every game they've played this year, they have scored 28, 41, 13, 14, and 24. So if you are looking for a solid over to bet, this would be a good one to do it. But like I said, I just think it's going to be the better team there. Arizona's defense is very wonky as well. But one thing I'll say about Green Bay is they miss Aaron Jones. I know Josh Jacobs is good, but Aaron Jones is, I still think a much superior running back.
Yeah.
Tennessee versus Indianapolis. For some reason, the Titans are the favorite in this game. I think, look, it was winning coming off the bye. I think the Colts take this one, especially two Colts. Bad taste in their mouth after the way they lost to Jacksonville last week.
Yeah, I just do not trust Will Levis here. I mean, basically the narrative with the Colts is that, like, you know, if you're like a prop better, you could pretty much take any team's number one receiver for all
yards. Who's on IR, by the way? Michael Pittman Jr. is out for this one.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Pittman on IR. So that's a blow for them. But Flacco wasn't exactly missing him against the Jaguars last week. So. But on the Titans side of things, I was going to follow up with Will Levis not really fully being able to exploit that terrible Colts secondary. Even it's crazy. Like they invested all this money signing Calvin Ridley, and they just have not been able to, they haven't been able to really maximize the guy at all. They're not really getting him involved in these games. I mean, this would be the game to do it, but it just at this point. You got to trust that Colts offense. The way that Flacco's throwing that ball with confidence, despite not having Pittman, clearly he's still capable of making big plays to Josh Downs and Alec Pierce, and even this could be an Adonai Mitchell spot. So I feel
Jonathan Taylor,
Jonathan Taylor, an easy one, right? I mean, guy's only been running against the Titans his whole career, so yeah, I mean it's pretty easy to trust the Colts offense to outperform here.
So I want to walk back my words with Michael Pittman. He is not on IR. IR is an option for him. He's dealing with a back problem right now. He didn't practice yesterday. He was limited yesterday. He didn't practice today. He was just an observer. So I would probably bank on him not playing in this game. But yeah, look, the Colts, I don't think are a good team. I've said this metaphor to many people. I'm going to say this to you too. But Anthony Richardson, it's one of those experiences where it's like, hey, come over here. We're going to do this. You're like, you guys have a good time. I'm going to stay over here and enjoy myself. I compare it to the rickety carnival rides. You see it like your county fair, your state fair, where it's just like, look, I'll watch from afar, but I don't want no business of Anthony Richardson being the quarterback of my team. I know he's not hurt he's not playing right now, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting that Joe Flacco, I mean, he comes in for the Browns as their backup. And, you come into the season, you think, oh, Deshaun Watson, dual threat, what a dynamic offense this is going to be. And then he gets hurt and they do better with Joe Flacco. And then you look at the Colts, you're like, oh, wow, Anthony Richardson, dual threat, what a dynamic offense this is going to be. And now they're doing better with Joe Flacco. He can keep this up for years.
Oh, yeah, just go collect a check, Joe. Which moves into us next with Philadelphia versus Cleveland. Two things I'm going to say about this game. One, I don't trust the Eagles at -9.5. I don't trust the Eagles to blow them out just because the Eagles haven't shown us that yet. Look at all the games they're supposed to win. Atlanta, that was a game you could have won. You let Atlanta get back into that game. New Orleans, you only really won because you had Saquon Barkley had that one incredible run. And then 2 weeks ago, you got your doors blown off by the Buccaneers. This is a 2-2 Eagles team right now where, look, my money was right away on this of Nick Sirianni being the first coach getting fired, not Robert Salah. But with this game right here, one thing I like is the over. The number is very low. I'm going to come back to it. I believe it's at 42.5. I think, look, I know Cleveland's offense has not been anything dynamic, but with Philadelphia's offense and Cleveland's, offense could get going eventually. Who's to say that this over under of 42.5 doesn't hit? 43 points is not asking for a whole lot.
Honestly, as much as I hate to do it, I got to gas up the Eagles here. I think the Browns are really one of the worst teams in the NFL right now, and it's honestly almost entirely because of Deshaun Watson. This guy is fired. This guy is absolutely horrible. The trade for him is one of the worst acquisitions in the history of professional sports. This team cannot function. They can't move the ball with him. He doesn't run anymore. He's an absolute waste of money, completely atrocious. And the only reason that this game would have been competitive is if the Eagles still had lingering wide receiver injuries. But A.J. Brown is going to play, and it looks like Devonta Smith is probably going to play. But I'll tell you this, even if Devonta Smith isn't cleared, which I think he's going to be, all you need is one of those guys. Because, yes, without both of them, Jalen Hurts does turn into a pumpkin. We've established that. Yeah. However, the Browns are just so bad that I don't think you can trust this team to put up more than 14 points at this point. So even if this was just the Saquon Barkley show and he was just running all over him the whole time, the Eagles would still win ugly. But with them getting AJ Brown back, I think that this is an easy double-digit lead, double-digit victory for the Eagles. And it's not to say they're going to do anything impressive, but you know what? They're going to give you more than nothing, which is what Cleveland gives you at this point.
So here's my thing with this. I'm not saying I think Philly wins this game. When I see the 9.5 and having the issues with the Eagles that we've seen before, even though with the wide receiver stuff, that's where it can concern me to where this is the game that Cleveland, catches lightning in a bottle and does something with it. Like what happened? Like remember last year, week 17, when Arizona went into Philadelphia and beat them outright? It's sort of that similar vibe to an extent. I'm not saying they're going to win. And how do I say this? I like them at minus 9.5. But I have my doubts with them at minus 9.5. They should. It's like going to I don't know.
It might be right at that area. Like it might be right at the 10 to 14 point range. I think that when people see
I'd lower it to like minus 5.5.
Minus 5. Okay, so you think a one score game. All right. I mean, I would agree with you if AJ Brown wasn't back. But the fact that he is back makes me think that if Washington can beat this team by 21, then so can these guys.
Mayday. It is finally Mayday in Foxborough. The Patriots are playing the Texans. The Patriots, I got to put this on for this segment because Sunday afternoon, Pat Patriot makes his, that's a little tight. For my balding head. Pat Patriot makes his return. Here's the thing. I'm very excited, but I'm going to be like a cautious parent with this because everyone's like, oh, you can't play him. Oh, this. As long as he looks competent, because some of the throws that Jacoby made last weekend cost New England the win. Throw out the stupid rule where it's like apparently if a receiver's catching the ball and they're backwards, their heel has to come down. But if they're going forwards, only the toe has to come down. It's stupid. I was pissed off at Adrian Hill for it, but the past is the past. But then you have the chance to potentially win it, and you throw it in the middle of the field to Hunter Henry where he doesn't have time to get out of bounds. There were plays like that was just making me say, I'm over Jacoby Brissett. This year is not about winning. This year is about looking forward to the future, and putting in Drake Maye makes us look forward to the future, and putting in Drake Maye, guess what? Shows signs of hope and optimism for a fan base that's really lacking it right now. I know the rest of the league doesn't care about that, but that's what's going on. Also, fun little side note, Sophie Weller and I will be here Monday night to recap his entire first game before she makes a long flight out to London, because guess who plays the Jags in London next week? These guys. On to the game. I have some sense to be a little optimistic because you know how you were saying earlier, AJ Brown and no Smith, Jalen Hurts turns into a pumpkin? Mm-hmm. No Nico Collins, and that's what happened to CJ Stroud last week. I know they have good depth at wide receiver. They have Tank Dell. They have Stephon Diggs. They have John Mechie, which a lot of people forget about. And Joe Mixon, we're still trying to see if he's going to play or not. Houston's defensive front is scary as hell with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. And, they've got some dogs there as well. D'Amico Ryans is going to have a game plan to ruin it. I'm not here to say the Patriots are going to win because that'd be stupid of me. But I think there's a world where the Patriots cover that 6.5 number. Because if you remember week 2, the spread was the same and the Bears lost by 6. Good teams win, great teams cover. The one thing I want to see from me is how without Nico Collins, who does Christian Gonzalez shadow? Is it Tank Dell or is it Diggs? I would probably put my money on Tank Dell. And then with the defensive line, can they stop the run game? Can they stop a very powerful on his legs running back in CJ Stroud? So we'll have to see what happens there. But for Drake Maye, I'm just looking to see those little flash signs of hope for the future where, look, he doesn't have to look perfect. And also, I know everyone's saying, oh, you picked the wrong time to start him. Justin Herbert started his first game against Patrick Mahomes. There's no such thing as a perfect time to start a quarterback, even if it was week 1. But I'm going to give you some props right now that I really like for this game that I would urge any of the betting public to take. And these are Patriot touchdown scores. I know it's crazy, but hear me out if FanDuel even has them. Okay, they have passing props and they have receiving props. So here's receiving prop. Demario Douglas over 30.5 yards. Jalen Polk over 24.5 yards. Jalen Polk's going to be coming out hungry and wanting revenge after what happened last week. My final verdict.
Those are the overs? Wow.
Yep, 30.5, 24.5.
Those are spicy. Yeah,
the touchdown props aren't out yet because I still feel like they're trying to figure the lines out for it. But Demario Douglas has never scored a touchdown. And also, here's the other thing, too. If you want to look at Kendrick Bourne, you look at Kendrick Bourne. It's just, all I'm looking for is just, it's like, you know how the Bears with Caleb Williams, where they're looking for that sign? That's what we want in New England. We just want the sign that he's going to be good. To where then when you're watching your game and Big Rat and I are on here talking about Daniel Jones, we're looking good, which, folks, cheap plug for Sunday Night Football, Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes in primetime, very dimey, very demure. But I'm going to go the same result with this game as I do with most Patriots games this year. Texans win, Patriots cover.
Okay. I mean, I don't think the Patriots are going to cover, but I also don't know that they're going to get completely embarrassed either. I mean, I think that not having Nico Collins definitely
the back door could be open. I'm going to say that. I think the back door could be open here.
Yeah, I understand the take. I don't disagree with the analysis. I just kind of think it is a rough spot for a rookie QB to debut against a DeMeco Ryans defense. You've outlined.
That's what scares me.
You've outlined the danger of the Texans defensive line with, Anderson and Hunter. They're going to be coming right for Drake May's head. But, I mean, I do agree that, why not throw the kid in the fire? I mean, this whole season is supposed to be basically one giant learning experience anyway. And I think that the fact that their record is so bad is 1-4 right now actually takes the pressure off completely, because it just validates the fact that it's a rebuilding year. Just kind of go out there and see if you can develop some chemistry with Polk and Douglas maybe and give them some ideas of how they can build moving forward. I do think that Houston has plenty of firepower to withstand the loss of Collins, even if, let's just say, not having Collins means that the win margin of this is.
He's on IR, by the way.
Yes, he is on IR for a few games, and I think that that's a real bummer for Houston, because Nico Collins, the end of last year and coming into this year was looking like, it was kind of establishing himself as a top 10, maybe top 5 receiver in the league. So that's definitely a blow for them. They're going to need him back up for the playoff stretch for sure. But you've got Stephon Diggs. They've got to get it going again with Tank Dell, though. This guy was very explosive last year before the injury. And with, Diggs being more of possession receiver, Tank is your guy that you're going to look to for those big plays to stretch the field. And him and Stroud haven't really connected on those deep shots this year so far. So we will see if they're able to get that going here. I think that Houston wins by double digits, but it may not be a total disaster blowout. The game is in New England. And again, I think with the Collins limitation, it might, if they have the right matchup in there with Gonzalez, they might be able to keep this game within reach. I don't like the Patriots to cover, though. I don't think that they're going to wind up being able to do enough on offense in this game, but there could be some bright spots.
Give me 23-17. Texans win.
I'm going to go 23-10.
I was going to say 23-10, but then there's a late garbage time touchdown just to, F the line.
The backdoor cover. I got you. Like I said, I respect the analysis.
Yeah. That's why I think it's just the number being high, people kind of not laying by the wayside, but I think it's more or less just I have more hope for the Patriots and the Saints just because we know Drake May is a first-round talent. That's all. Yeah. Speaking of first-round quarterbacks, Jaden Daniels has looked really good. I know you're not going to like hearing this, but I like the fact that a team like DC finally has a franchise quarterback. I like the fact that, this fan base that's been in the pit of mediocrity with shitty ownership for the last 20 years, 30 years even, if you will, is looking good. That being said, though, I think this is a game where Baltimore just shows the world they're the better team. I think this is a come back down to earth game for the Commanders. The kind of game, too, where I can see it's like, hey, kid, you did good, but this is what a Super Bowl team looks like. I like Washington. I like what they're doing. I think the defense is clicking. Cliff Kingsbury's looking good. But I know you hate hearing me say all these things. That being said, this is a 6.5 point spread for a reason. I don't think this is anything. I think this is like a 7 to 10 point game, but I think this is just a balanced test of showing, hey, Baltimore is who they are for a reason, and Washington, this is the reason why you were the second worst team in the league last year.
I actually think that this game could turn into a giant blowout. I think that Washington is just due for that comeback down to earth game. Jaden Daniels as a rookie quarterback is due for a mistake-prone game. And I think that this is the type of game where
type of defense.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like Baltimore's defense is kind of overdue for, a dominant performance. I mean, they were
Josh Allen 2 weeks ago.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So I think that they're able to do that to the Bills. A more seasoned quarterback behind center there. I feel like it could be a very similar outcome here for Washington, where I feel like Burrow lighting up that secondary. It's a division rival that he knows that team better, and they were really playing for their season right there with two, maybe the best, one of the best 1-2 punch wide receiver combos in the league, and Chase and Higgins. And not that what Daniels hasn't done so far hasn't been impressive, but I feel like this is a game where if Baltimore gets the running game going early, and I don't think that the Commanders will be able to stop that 1-2 punch of Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. Derrick Henry is a match made in heaven for this offense, because when you have this guy, plowing his way up the middle, and then you have Lamar Jackson scrambling to the outside, the defense gets completely exhausted. They don't know what direction they need to go. I mean, it's like if I was playing defense against the Ravens, I would be throwing up after the first quarter, just chasing these guys all over the field. So I feel like that's what's going to happen here. And what's going to do also is just kill the clock. Jaden Daniels is going to go into desperation mode. He's going to throw interceptions. And I think that he will make some plays, because Baltimore has had a propensity for giving up some big passing yardage this year. But a lot of it could come maybe garbage time after they build up a nice lead. This is I want to say a 38-20 type of final score here. I just feel like Baltimore's going to have their way with them, and they're going to be able to do whatever they want on offense.
Give me 34-17. It's one of those. I can see it being 14-10 at half, but then the Ravens they get a couple turnovers, a couple breaks go their way, and they just run away with this game.
Yeah.
We move to the late window, as the first game is Denver versus the LA Chargers. It's the same logic here. Look, the Broncos have looked good the last few weeks. They've won 3 games in a row. The Chargers are coming off the bye. I believe they're healthy. I think Justin Herbert's supposed to play in this game. With that being said, this is the game where the Denver Broncos come back down to earth because they're not a good football team. Give me the Chargers. There's also -3 as well.
Yeah, the Broncos might be. Let me just say, I don't think the Chargers offer a whole lot that's anything impressive here, other than the fact that they've successfully transformed into the Los Angeles Ravens by hiring Greg Roman as their OC, hiring Jim Harbaugh as a head coach, and getting J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards as your backfield. The running game looks good. I think that they're the better team than Denver. Denver might be the worst 3-2 team I've ever seen. I don't know how this team has a winning record. It's just pure dumb luck. And, I'm not saying the Chargers necessarily are going to be a playoff contender, but they're good enough to beat Denver here.
Yeah, this is going to be a bit of a grimy slugfest football game, like a 16-10, something like that. It's just one team gets the better of the other, and then they go from there. Las Vegas versus Pittsburgh. I'm going to say the same thing here too. Pittsburgh. This game's going to be dominated by Steelers fans, and the Steelers are in that same boat. I've been waiting to show this to you, Jared, because the Steelers are in that same boat as the Bears are. Because, look, they play the Raiders, and they have the Jets, then they have you guys, and then they have the bye week. But after their bye week, Commanders, Ravens, Browns, Bengals, Browns, Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, Bengals. Think about that. Your only non-divisional games are the Eagles, the Commanders, the Chiefs. It's the same thing with the Steelers. If you want to be a playoff team, this is a game you have to get.
Yeah, unfortunately, I feel like the Steelers are going to luck their way into a playoff spot just because of how soft the schedule is, and how, if the Bengals are truly a dumpster fire, if they trade T. Higgins, if they wind up throwing in the towel in this year, then those games are going to be gimmies, and they're going to wind up getting in the playoffs. I'm not that impressed by this team, but all of their opponents are worse than them. That's basically the only way I can describe this. Granted, losing to Dallas doesn't help, but they're going to beat the Raiders here. The Raiders are a total mess right now. There's so much internal drama going on. Now you're starting Aiden O'Connell against them, against the Steelers, which have always been one of the best coach defenses in the game. So even if the Steelers only score 20 points again, it's going to be enough to win. And they're going to play the Jets the following week, and they're probably going to beat them too.
You know what? This game right here, it's going to be ugly. It's going to be whatever. I'm going to go 14-6 for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I can see that.
Next game, too, in the 4 o'clock window. This is a game I asked myself, God, why is this game at 4 o'clock? And that's Carolina taking on Atlanta.
Oh my gosh, what a horrible slate we have here. Good Lord.
Like, I know, like 4 o'clock. There's one good game and it's coming up next.
Yeah, coming up next.
With this game, though, where it's like, why did this game get a 4 o'clock slot? I'm going to say this, though. Atlanta wins, but divisional games are wacky, and it's a 6-point spread. I think Carolina does just enough to cover. This could be another backdoor opportunity like the Patriots, or it's a push, It's like I don't know, 20-14. They get a late garbage time touchdown.
I mean, maybe because it's a divisional game, but honestly, man, like you've got Atlanta coming into this game with extra rest after a game where Kirk Cousins threw for 500 yards, and now he's facing a way worse.
I think that's why it's a potential trap game for the Falcons. Everyone's going to think, oh, look what Kirk did last week. He's going to do the same thing this week. But then this is the kind of game that Kirk Cousins loses. It's a game he's supposed to win. Look at the playoff game you guys played in him 2 years ago. That's a game everyone thought, oh, Vikings got this no problem. What happened? Vikings did not get shit.
Well, I don't know.
Not on you. That's just me saying, Kurt.
No. I understand that. I just think here you're like, yes, it's a division game and everything, and I do think that the Falcons have their problems, but to me, the Panthers getting absolutely decimated by Caleb Williams last week, and this entire season, really, they've shown you pretty much less than nothing outside of that one game that, where they beat the Raiders, who, with all their internal behind-the-scenes drama, I feel like that team could lose to anybody at this point. I think that Atlanta takes care of business here. And I mean, hey, Bijan Robinson just popped up as questionable. So now the Falcons can fulfill their dream of letting Tyler Algier get every single carry in this game because they hate Bijan Robinson for some inexplicable reason.
Drake London game, calling it now. Drake London game. Yeah. The game of the weekend. The Dallas Cowboys hosting the Detroit Lions.
Maybe. It could be. I mean,
the game like then is America's game of the week.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah, it might be. I mean, Dallas has kind of been really sloppy this year. I think I like Detroit to win this game for sure. They're the better team by a pretty wide margin. I don't like anything that I've seen from Dallas this year. I think that, with the weird conditions of the weather and the long delay, and then they struggle bust their way past the Steelers in an ugly game. But, they still got slightly more pieces of work with them than them. And now you're facing Detroit that they can beat you so many different ways. And also their defense has looked significantly improved from last year as well. So I feel like the Lions are one of the most balanced teams in the league right now. And the Cowboys, the only thing that they really offer at this point is CeeDee Lamb. And other than that, it's a pretty unimpressive team.
That's what they're going to be the next few years because of all the money they don't have to spend on people. So
yeah.
I like Detroit here too. Look, they're coming off the bye. And also, here's the other thing, too. The fact that Dallas had that long weather delay, won on a last-second touchdown against Pittsburgh. This is the kind of game where, look, Dallas is in the prime spot for a reason. They're America's team for a reason. But at the end of the day, give me the Lions. Give me the Lions. Because we want to move on because we got Sunday Night Football to talk about. We have the Cincinnati Bengals going to MetLife, where your Giants are coming off one hell of a victory and also one hell of a cover against the Dallas Cowboys a couple weeks ago. But this begs to ask the question, is Daniel Jones better without Malik Neighbors?
No, he isn't. Absolutely.
That was sarcasm.
Yeah. No, I did kind of see that coming, though. Danny will tell you that I called the Slayton masterclass right before it happened. Just
Big Rat and I were on plus 7.5. I'm going to say that right now. Big Rat and I were on plus 7.5 last week.
Very good. Glad to hear it. You made the right choice. I think that, going back to what we were talking about with the Jets earlier about the offensive line woes, I mean, the Giants, we can talk about their offseason decisions, going into this year, but the biggest one was Carmen Brasillo, hiring that guy, and then the personnel decisions they made in terms of, getting Runyon and Jermaine Illuminor, benching Evan Neal before the season started. This looks like an entirely new offense, and it's all because of the offensive line. It's incredible what getting that right can do for a team because all the talk going into this season was about, the Giants lost their best player. They lost Saquon Barkley. They're not missing a beat in the running game. Between Devin Singletary and what Tyrone Tracy gave you against the Seahawks last week, people can write it off as one great fluke game or talk about Seattle or whatever. But the bottom line is running the ball in this league, there's a reason that so many teams are going to a committee format because when you get the system down, when you have good run blocking, you can open up holes. It's very plug and play when it comes to the actual person in the backfield. for the most part, right? So, and that's also, it's benefited Daniel Jones. He's getting more pass protection. He's getting clean pockets. I don't think that he's played a perfect season by any means. I still think that his downfield accuracy isn't impressive whatsoever. But he's looked efficient this year. You look at the accuracy numbers are going to pop on paper. If you actually watch the games, there's definitely, I think he's leaving a little bit of meat on the bone. And we're probably going to need Malik Neighbors back. I know he's still questionable this year for this week, coming back from the concussion, and the Cincinnati Bengals season is basically on the line here. But the one thing I'll point to is that the Giants defense has been pretty bend but don't break effective this year. I mean, you can point to that one blowout loss against the Vikings, who look like the best team in the league right now. But other than that, this has been a good unit every single week. I don't think this defense has gotten embarrassed one time. So it's going to be a big game. Yeah, early on, I would say, but I think that we were just so dead in the water on offense that, I don't even think Justin Jefferson had more than 60 yards receiving in that game. So, but hey, that was definitely a bad game all around. But since then, they've looked really solid. And I think that that keep away format against the Seahawks, where they were able to just dominate time of possession and keep them off the field, that's how we're going to be able to win against Cincy. But obviously it's not going to be easy. The Bengals, again, are playing for their lives, and it wouldn't surprise me to see the Bengals win. Obviously, they boast more firepower, and if they go to 1-5, their season's basically dead. But at the same time, we can vault ourselves into the playoff race with a win to 3-3. But I just got to say, I'm so pissed at Daboll and Shane. The fact that they actually allowed this team to compete against Washington, knowing Gano was questionable with a hammy, without a backup kicker. And they put themselves in a position where if something happened to Gano, they weren't going to be able to kick field goals or extra points. And now you look, and if they had won that game, they'd be in a three-way tie for first right now at 3-2. And instead, we're 2-3. So it's cool that we're having this discussion about the Giants playing better football, but I'm pissed at our leadership that they put us in with such a reckless and just irresponsible decision that might have cost this team a playoff spot at the end of the year.
So I'm going to go Bengals here just because it's a big desperation spot for them. And if you guys lose, it's going to 2-4 is not ideal, but going to 2-4, 2-4 is a lot better than 1-5.
Yes.
I think this is the kind of game too where, look, and I think everyone's going to expect Joe Burrow to come out and just light the world on fire. The plus 3.5, I can see this being a field goal game. I can. It's just, what?
It's the way the Giants have been playing. I mean, they're not getting humiliated on defense. You know what I mean? It could wind up being a little bit more low scoring than people expect.
Yeah, for Daniel Jones, Daniel's played a lot better this year to his own credit. Look, I know the first game there was a lot of iffiness just with coming back from the ACL, the way he had the pick six to Van Ginkel. But the last few games, he's really settled down. Even the Dallas game, it wasn't anything exciting, but he still managed to, work his little dimes magic and do it. And then even last week too, the fact that the team allowed that 101 return and they still held on to win. There's certain character aspects of this team that I like, but then there's certain parts of this team too where I'm I don't know if they're ready to compete yet. I still think they're maybe look, I'm also going to say this too with the head coaching management. As long as they win, I'd say 6, 7, 8 games, I think you keep everyone around. I think they would have to go 4-13, 3-14. That means you're going to win 1 or 2 more games this year. I don't think it's happening. This is a team that, look, I think next year, you're in the Chicago situation of, hey, you got to make the playoffs or you got to have a winning record. Even if you miss out next year and you're 9-8, then next year's the year everyone gets fired. I just think for what everyone's gone through and all this stuff like that, I know. And also I'll say this too. Doing the hard knocks, if you could go back in time, I would tell someone at the Giants, don't do that. Don't be the one to do that just because then it created so much unnecessary drama for the organization.
Yeah, it's the Giants once again find themselves in a really interesting position to where I think that after they lost to the Commanders, I was ready to just throw in the towel on this whatsoever and just be like, there's no saving this. Just, can we bench Jones now and just move on, get the number 1 pick? But then, they kept on playing, and now it's kind of apparent to me. I'm like, oh, wow, now the narrative starts to shift where it's like, okay, we had that bad game against Minnesota, should have won the Washington game, actually should have won the Washington game. The Cowboys game, very competitive, blew some opportunities, but certainly had the opportunity to win.
Covered.
Covered. And then
play week 3 again. I'm blanking on that.
Week 3, that was the Browns.
Oh yes, right. Oh,
we beat the Browns. Yeah, and no, and Neighbors obviously had his coming out party during that stretch from the Washington to Dallas game. So it looks like Neighbors is going to miss again because he still hasn't advanced in the protocol. But honestly, I think that the way we functioned against Seattle, and since he's another unimpressive defense, I feel like we can kind of do the same sort of thing. I'm more questioning, are we going to be able to limit Joe Burrow enough to where, that modest 20-ish point output is going to be enough to win? Maybe, maybe not. I think after the season, there's still, there's a little stretch after that where it's like you got big games coming up against Philly and Washington to where if you're able to go on a little run before the bye, there's still a chance. But now that, again, the narrative has shifted. I think that a lot of people are looking like this is a competitive team now that knows what they're doing. Where, I bought in that regard. Daniel Jones, I think, could be better, but I feel like, I'm watching competent football right now.
That's all you can really ask for with the Giants, where there was just so many varying questions with the quarterback position and all that stuff, So that's all you can really ask for right now.
Right.
And then Monday night, we go back to MetLife. I don't think I've ever seen this before in my life, where you have two teams who need to have a get-right game. You have the New York Jets, fired their coach, Jeff Albrecht coming in, taking over. They lost to the Broncos and the Vikings. But then you have the Buffalo Bills, a team where they got their doors blown off. They started 3-0, but then they got their doors blown off by the Ravens. Last week, they had some very inexcusable time management against the Texans, and ultimately, look, they did
what was going on there?
They did not look, but they just think too. Besides, one Keon Coleman play, they did not look good at all for someone who took their over. But my thing with this game is, I'm going to lean to I know this is so not messed up. This is just so where I'm conflicted because you have the Jets with the head coach bump, but at the same time too, I'm going to go with a team I trust to bounce back. I'm going to go with the team who, I think can bounce back. I'm going Buffalo. I think that, look, at the end of the day, too, here's the thing. The Jets, you can say, they need the game more. It's not that the Jets need the game more. I just trust Buffalo in a spot like this. I trust them to go back to 4-2. It's like, hey, nothing to worry about here, folks. We're all good. Because here's the thing, too. If Buffalo loses and goes to 3-3, it is what it is. Jets fall to 2-4. It's going to be total chaos on WFAN on Tuesday morning. Which I'm kind of rooting for. But I just think at the end of the day, look, I trust the Bills more than I trust the Jets right now. So Jets, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong.
Well, yeah. Well, I think that the key
that I can trust you in a spot like this.
Yeah. I mean,
a primetime game after you fire your coach, or guess what? You have 3 of your next 4 games are on primetime. Your only non-primetime game is because you're playing our sorry asses.
Right. I mean, I'm kind of with you. I lean toward I lean toward Buffalo here. I feel like, what's interesting here is that you got 2 really bad run defenses going up against each other. So I feel like this game is going to be a lot more boring than people want it to be. I feel like for the Bills, this is the type of game where you just feed James Cook. Your offense has looked really putrid the last couple of weeks. I think that you got to get back to basics. This has got to be one of those games. Like, remember when they beat Dallas last year and they basically just fed James Cook the entire game? I feel like, coming against the Jets and the struggle against the run all year, I feel like you want to just, lean on Cook throughout this game. Maybe get Josh Allen going on the ground as well. And hey, how about Dalton Kincaid? Dalton Kincaid was expected to take such a leap forward this year. People thought that with the absence of Diggs, with the absence of Gabe Davis, that he was kind of going to step into almost like a Travis Kelce type of role and really be the lead receiver on this team. And he has not been
right now.
Yeah. Well, he's playing like this version of Kelce, right? I mean, we're not really seeing much at him. And also considering that Khalil Shakir, who Josh Allen clearly has the most chemistry with, he missed last week and he's still working his way back from a shoulder injury. I think that he's still questionable for the game right now. So if he doesn't wind up playing, that's even more of a reason to really get Kincaid going again against a team that doesn't do so great against tight ends. So, Keon Coleman has not been much of a WR1 for this team, as people might have hoped. He's more of kind of like a one play, one route kind of deep threat guy. So I feel like this game, you get some completions over the middle to Kincaid. You'll let Cook carry the load. and that defense get back on track against Rodgers, because you know that the Jets offense is all out of whack right now. So I feel like the game could be ugly. This might be like a 17-10 type, or maybe a little more, but I don't know. Both of these teams have just been the opposite of fun to watch this year. I could say that about a lot of games. There's a lot of games this week that they just look ugly on paper.
Yeah, there's just this week. There's a lot of. It's so weird this week where college football has some bangers this weekend. They have some absolute just amazing games. Or Ohio State versus Oregon, Texas, Oklahoma. What else is there? There's some other ones that I'm really.
The MLB playoffs. Hello, you got plenty of excitement on that side of things too, right? Come on, NFL.
You have NHL season starting up. You have a lot of this exciting stuff to where it's it's a great time to be a sports fan. But for this game, look, I just don't see anything with this game. I just don't see it being pretty. Whoever wins, it's gonna be one of those it's like the feeling you get when you eat McDonald's. I won, I'm full, but I'm not proud of myself.
That is a great analogy right there.
That's how I view it.
Well done.
Yeah. But you know what? We're still gonna watch it. I'm still gonna watch the games, even though it is Thanksgiving in Canada this weekend. Fun fact.
Well, that could be. I don't want to jinx anything, but there might be something else to watch on television in the world of sports that night. Fingers crossed. We need to win tonight, baby.
Well, you know what? I'm going to let Jared go because he's got something to stress over. I got bets to stress over, which is not as stressful as playoff baseball because my team is incompetent. Right. But anyway, Jared Silverclite, Griff here. Episode number 317 in the books. We'll see you for 318 and 319 Sunday and Monday. Enjoy, everybody.